Hello, how are you? In recent years, the world has suffered global warming, the increase in the average temperature of the oceans and the atmosphere. As a consequence of this phenomenon, the Earth is going through constant climate changes, extinctions of various species, and sea levels. And the news is not very good. Cities will be able to disappear soon. This is a small list of them. Venice, Italy, considered an Italian jewel in the Adriatic Sea. Venice is one of the most iconic and romantic cities in the world. Built on an archipelago of 118 small islands, connected by more than 400 bridges, and separated by a series of channels. The city endures millions of tourists annually. Its history dates back to the Middle Ages, when it was a powerful maritime republic and an important commercial and cultural center. Monuments like the Basilica of St. Marcos, the Palazzo Ducale, and the Rialto Bridge are just some examples of its historical and architectural wealth. However, Venice faces a serious existential threat, the risk of disappearing, due to a combination of natural and human factors. But why does Venice run the risk of disappearing? First, the increase in sea level. Global climate change is accelerating the meltdown of the polar calottes, causing the increase in sea level. Venice, which is just a few meters above sea level, is particularly vulnerable to this phenomenon. Inundations, known locally as high water or high waters, have become more frequent and intense in recent decades, submerging streets and historical buildings. Second, the city is sinking. In addition to the increase in sea level, Venice is literally sinking. Studies indicate that this occurs due to the composition of the soil in the region, formed by unstable sand. The extraction of underground water in the region in the 20th century aggravated the problem, although this practice had been interrupted. Third, excessive tourism and human impact. The city receives millions of visitors every year, which puts significant pressure on its delicate infrastructure. Cruiser ships, for example, create waves that corrode the foundations of historical buildings and alter the ecosystem of the Venice Lagoon. Fourth, changes in local ecosystems. The Venice Lagoon is a complex and fragile ecosystem that is being affected by pollution and by the construction of artificial barriers, such as the Moose Project, a series of mobile ports designed to protect the city from floods. Although necessary, this type of intervention can bring environmental impacts in the long term. Although initiatives such as the Moose Project show efforts to save the city, many specialists fear that these measures are just temporary solutions to the threat scale, without significant global actions to reverse or decrease the consequences of climate change. The sea level can turn parts of Venice into some uninhabitable decades. Bangkok, Thailand. The vibrant capital of Thailand faces serious threats that indicate that it may be at risk of partially disappearing or becoming uninhabitable in some decades. The city, known for its golden temples, floating markets, and dynamic nightlife, is built on an alluvial plan to the Gulf of Thailand. This strategic location also makes it extremely vulnerable to various environmental and structural problems. Bangkok is funding a rate estimated at 1 to 2 centimeters per year. This phenomenon occurs mainly because the city was built on a moldy alluvial soil, made of clay and sediments that sift over the weight of the buildings. The excessive extraction of underground water aggravates the problem, making the soil more unstable. With the advance of climate changes, the sea level increase represents direct threat to Bangkok. Studies indicate that most of the city can be submerged until 2050, especially in coastal areas and the lowest areas. The combination of the soil and sea level increase increases the risk of permanent floods. Bangkok suffers from frequent floods, aggravated by intense rains of the monsoon season and by the flooding of the Chao Phraya River, which cuts the city. The city's drainage infrastructure is overloaded, unable to deal with the increasing intensity of the storms. Another factor is the rapid and disordered growth of the city, which contributes to environmental degradation. The excessive urban expansion reduces green areas and water retention, such as mangas and pantanos, which first help to contain floods. In addition, the weight of the buildings and infrastructures built on the moldy soil accelerates the foundation process. Bangkok is one of the densest cities in the world, and its urbanization led to the formation of hot islands, where the urban temperature is significantly higher than in the nearby rural areas. This, combined with the pollution of the air and water, aggravates the impacts of climate changes and makes the city less habitable. Basra, Iraq, the second largest city in the country and one of the oldest and historically important regions of the Middle East, face a series of environmental, economic, and social challenges that can make it unbearable in the coming decades. Located on the banks of the Arabian Chat Al Arab, the city is one of the economic pillars of Iraq, being responsible for most of the oil production and sheltering the main port of the country. With all due respect to the environmental degradation, the management of resources and climate changes are taking Basra to a critical situation. The problems are various, being the first to the hydropower crisis and the salinity of the soil. The Saudi Arabian River, formed by the influence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is the main source of Basra water. However, the management of the water, combined with the construction of mountain ranges in neighboring countries, such as Turkey and Iran, significantly reduced the flow of the river. This allowed the salty water of the Persian Gulf to invade the bed, increasing the salinity of the water and making it an improper human consumption. In addition, the growing salinity is degrading the soil, making it useless for the crop and damaging the local agricultural economy, which was already in decline. Basra's basic infrastructure in Basra is precarious, leading to the decline of industrial waste. Directly in the Saudi Arabian Channel River, the pollution of the water is causing serious diseases, such as cholera and gastroenteritis. In 2018, for example, tens of thousands of people were hospitalized due to water pollution. Basra faces extremely high temperatures, frequently exceeding 50 degrees Celsius during summer. With the advance of climate changes, the waves of heat are becoming more intense and prolonged, making it difficult for residents to live and overload the already fragile electric infrastructure that often suffers from floods. The reduction of the flow of rivers, the salinity of the soil, and the deforestation in the surrounding areas contributed to the advance of deforestation. Basra is regularly affected by sand and dust storms that harm the health and respiratory system of the population and make economic activities difficult. If the current trends continue, Basra can become uninhabitable in a few decades. The combination of water scarcity, extreme temperatures, pollution, and environmental degradation is already forcing many inhabitants to migrate to other regions. Miami, Florida. Miami is world famous for its beaches, tropical and vibrant cultural life. However, this iconic city faces serious environmental threats that may lead to partially disappear or suffer recurrent floods in the future. Located on a coastal plain and built on a high-pitched limestone floor, Miami is extremely vulnerable to the increase in sea level and other impacts on climate change. The increase in sea level, driven by global warming and the landslides of the polar mounds, is the main risk for the city. The Ocean and Atmospheric Administration of the United States, NOAA, predicts that the sea level in the region can rise between 30 and 90 centimeters to 2,100 centimeters. Even a modest increase can cause permanent floods in low areas of the city, such as Miami Beach and parts of downtown Miami. Miami already faces floods caused by high seas, known as Sunday Field, which occur without the presence of rain during large-scale sea events, especially in king fates. The water from the ocean rises by drainage systems and floods the streets and villages, a phenomenon that is becoming more frequent and very serious. The waterfall on which Miami was built is highly permeable, which means that the water from the sea can easily infiltrate the subsoil. This makes the traditional barriers against floods ineffective, like dikes, because the water simply goes down. To complicate a little more, Miami is in a region that propels hurricanes, and climate changes are increasing the intensity and frequency of these storms. Stronger hurricanes bring devastating winds, sea storms and torrential rains that cause generalized floods and damage to the infrastructure. Orlando, the capital of Orlando, is famous for its historical channels, charming architecture, and an advanced hydropower system that protects it for centuries. However, the city, located below the sea level in some areas, faces significant threats of climate change and sea level increase. Even with a sophisticated infrastructure, Mr. Dan may be at risk of serious floods and loss of habitability in the next decades if the challenges are not faced continuously and effectively. Why is he at risk? Most of the lowlands are located in lowlands or below sea level. Mr. Dan is one of the most vulnerable cities, with global warming accelerating the melting of the polar calo and sea level increase. The coastline areas face a growing threat of submersion. Projections indicate that sea level can rise between 1 and 2 meters to the end of the century, thus putting Mr. Dan at a significant risk. For each city, we see a set of specific solutions, including intergenerational ones. They're what governments should start doing immediately, working on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and treating international climate cooperation agreements. In the case of Venice, for example, they must expand the Mosey Project, strengthen the foundations, control tourism, and find a way to reduce or protect the structures of salinity. Studies are being done in various cities with the same problems, but the solutions for now are very expensive. And given the global financial situation, little is being done for now. I'll stick around. Until next time, and thanks for watching.